Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. We are back at it again with the Legends of Runeterra content. I know it's been some time since I put out a video, but we're back at it again today, as if you guys haven't been around, the newest cards just dropped here. 3 new champions, a bunch of new cards, and a bunch more things to play with. Sharima is really starting to feel like a more fleshed out region, and we have a bunch of other strategies now to support, especially my boy here, Malphite. I have been so excited to play with this card ever since they did the reveal video and kind of showed us Malphite and some of his support cards. So this is the deck we're going to be bringing to today's game. This is a very landmark focused deck that essentially wants to ride out the early opposition, sort of get to the late game, and eventually crush my opponent under a hail of rocks, or rock elementals as the case might be. Let's go ahead and hop into the card by card breakdown here, which has a bunch of new stuff here. So especially if you haven't seen anything in the new set, a lot of this may be new to you guys. Also keep in mind that these decks are sort of still being worked on by me, so if things look a little janky, if you're wondering why I'm playing 1 or 2 copies, essentially that's why. Up here at the 1 mana mark, we do have Chip, who on top of being the cutest little thing that has ever been added to Legends of Runeterra, is a very effective card in this deck. He's a 1 mana 1/1, which is nothing to sneeze at, but if I've played a landmark, he gets +2/+2. This also works if I have just played a landmark in the game, so he doesn't have to have seen me summon a landmark. So this is essentially a 1 mana 3/3 as long as I played out a landmark this game, which I think makes Chip quite good, especially in this deck. And like, let's be real, I was going to play him in the Malphite deck regardless of how good he was because of just how cute he is. I can't separate him from his papa. I'm also running 3 copies here of Imagine Possibilities. Now, this is an interesting spell. This allows me to guarantee that I'll have a landmark with countdown in hand if I absolutely am fiending for at least one kind of landmark, or it advances my landmarks 1 round. This has some fun combinations here with like Hibernating Rockbear, which allows me to get it out slightly faster. Rockfall Path gives my opponent less time to see the obliteration coming. There are a lot of things that I think this card can do. Now, the biggest thing is it does create a random landmark, so if I get something like a Buried Sun Disk, well, I'm kind of SOL. I don't really care about that landmark in particular, but there's enough flexibility here that I feel like I at least want to try this out, especially given that it's a focus spell. So worst case scenario, I play it and hope the landmark that it gives me is something that digs me out of the hole. So we'll find out how that goes. Finally, at 1 mana mark, we also have 3 copies of Shapestone, which is a really strong spell. It's a +1/+1 at burst. Unless you summon a landmark, then it's +3/+1, which allows your unit to punch up significantly higher than its weight bracket, or maybe potentially slightly survive any damage it may be taking. This makes it a very powerful spell overall, I think. The only hoop you have to jump through is to summon a landmark, and this deck has so many landmarks that that should not be a problem, so this will almost always be the +3/+1, making it a very solid inclusion. 3 copies here of Blue Sentinel up at the 2 mana mark here. Blue Sentinel is a 2/3 for 2 that last breath to summon a Crest of Insight. The Crest of Insight both ramps me a little bit of extra, which is not that big of a deal, but the biggest thing here is that it gets me a landmark by technically as early as turn 2, as long as I can either block with Blue Sentinel and get him killed, or swing into something and get him blocked and have him killed that way. This also means that if I swing with the Blue Sentinel and a Chip at the same time, and the Sentinel dies, he creates the landmark, Chip immediately pumps up, and then Chip either deals 3 to the dome instead of 1, or he trades with whatever he's getting blocked by. So it's a fun little combo. You do have to get the Blue Sentinel killed. Your opponent can sort of play around it, but I kind of like how it plays overall. 3 copies of Hibernating Rockbear here. This is a 2 mana landmark, which is really the biggest reason I'm running it, but the countdown 3 does summon out a Grumpy Rockbear, which is a 5/4, so it kind of allows you to start swinging in and doing some big damage off the bat once the countdown is done. Obviously, Imagine Possibilities gets me the Rockbear slightly faster, so there's some sort of utility and fun stuff to be had here, especially combos with some of the other cards in the deck. 3 copies of Rockhopper. I've talked about him before. You should know why he's in the deck. He summons a landmark. He's good removal. There's a lot of good things this card does, so we don't need to waste time on him. 3 copies of Rockfall Path. This is a countdown 2 to obliterate the weakest enemy at 2 mana. Obviously, this does mean that your opponent can sort of outplay it by playing a weaker unit, but especially if I have something like Imagine Possibilities, I can kind of tweak the timing on when this is going to go off and potentially get something bigger than my opponent expects. So there is sort of ways for me to play around this card, and it's an interesting one. I don't know if I should be playing it at 3 copies, but, well, here we are, and we'll see how it goes. 2 copies of Desert Naturalist. Now this is a 2/4 for 4, which is a pretty bad body, but when I play her, you can destroy a landmark, which allows you to sort of reach out and get rid of things like your opponent's Sun Disk or Star Spring if they're starting to become problems. And if you destroy an allied landmark, you get to summon a Grumpy Rockbear. This means that if I already have a Hibernating Rockbear on the battlefield, I can play the Naturalist and pop it to just get that Rockbear right off the bat. It also means that if I have something like the Crest of Insight from the Blue Sentinel, when I don't need mana anymore, I can just play out the Desert Naturalist to destroy that to get a unit out of the deal. So a lot of things that Desert Naturalist can do, and she can maybe repurpose some of the Imagine Possibilities landmarks that I'm pulling as well. So that's why I kind of like her. I don't feel like I want to play her at 3 copies because she is a bit of a dead draw on occasion, but I like her enough to want to run her in the deck. 3 copies of Earth Elemental. This is one of the payoffs for playing so many landmarks. Once I've summoned 4 more landmarks in this game, it becomes a 6/5 with Overwhelm for 4 mana, which is a pretty decent body. It's not like a super good finisher by any stretch of the imagination, but if I'm swinging in with a couple of these and a couple of Rock Bears, my opponent is really going to be in a bad spot, as they'll just be taking a ton of damage off the cuff. So I kind of like this card. I'm not sure how I feel about it in the long run. I may end up swapping it out for more Stonebreakers at some point, but we'll kind of see how that goes. 2 copies of Ground Slam, another really interesting card similar to Nautilus's Riptide in that it's a 4-mana stunny unit at fast speed, but this deals 3 to the unit if I've summoned a landmark this game. This allows me to do things like kill a back row Misfortune or kill a back row Aurelia. It also allows me to stun off the bigger boys that may survive the 3 damage, but at least prevent them from going to the dome. And this deck does have sort of a late game bent, so I do feel like having some degree of defensive spells is going to be a good thing, especially given that I'm not running Quicksand at all. I know, I'm surprised too. 3 copies of Salt Spire. That might not be the correct number of this card to run, but that's where we're at right now. There's a countdown 2 to make a Grumpy Rockbear, so 2 extra mana, but 1 less turn I have to wait to actually get the unit. And then if I've summoned 4 more landmarks this game, I grant the strongest ally +2/+2. That's a pretty big deal. It means that the Rockbear can potentially come down as a 7/6, which is quite nice for me. Or if I have the Malphite already down, I can make him even bigger. There's some sort of flexible things that this does. It also gets me Rockbears faster, which I'm always a big fan of. 2 copies of Eye of the Ra-Horak. This is an interesting one that just got added with the new set. The countdown 1 stuns the 2 weakest enemies, but if you play this on a Daybreak proc, you get 2 eyes, one of which is a countdown 2. So you can keep the 2 weakest enemies on your opponent's side of the field stunned for 2 full turns, which is quite nice. Obviously, there's a bit of a lead-up time because you have to actually get that countdown, but again, Imagine Possibilities does give me the opportunity to get those stuns immediately if I need them, so there's sort of some flexibility here. Also, because it clones itself, that counts as me having played 10 mana worth of landmarks. It also counts as me playing 2 landmarks, which counts for both of my champions, so it's pretty good in that regard. But I do have to play it as my first spell a turn if I want to get the second. Speaking of champions, we have Taliyah, my first champion here. She is a 2/4 that, when I play her, summons an exact copy of an allied landmark, which lets me double down on things like a Rockfall Path or a Hibernating Rockbear, or, you know, any of the other landmarks I've got in the deck. Once she's flipped, once I've played 5 or more landmarks, she becomes a pretty decent offensive threat. Essentially, what Taliyah's effect does means that anything that blocks her with less than 7 health just dies before it even gets a chance to fight Taliyah, unless, of course, it's got things like Tough or Barrier, so there is some degree of counterplay to her. But especially if the thing does die, then Taliyah's just doing 6 to the Nexus. Or if she's not blocked, then she's doing 6 to the Nexus, which does make her a bit of an interesting finisher here. So I quite like where Taliyah is at in this deck. I like how she duplicates those landmarks to, again, accelerate me to the Malphite flip. Essentially, I've always played Malphite flipped in this deck thanks to Taliyah, so she's a pretty good inclusion. We're at 1 copy of Stonebreaker. I'm only at 1 copy here because I didn't want to cash out for all the rares. There were a bunch of new things released, guys, so I didn't have the wild cards for them all, but we do at least have the 1 copy here. He's one of the good finishers on the deck, a 6/4 that when I played him, as long as I've summoned 4 or more landmarks, I can deal 4 to an enemy and 2 to the enemy Nexus. This allows me to nuke a back row enemy, get a little bit of extra Nexus damage down, and play yet another big beefy boy who can start swinging in. So I do kind of like where he plays in the deck, and I may swap out some of the Earth Elementals for more Stonebreakers later on down the road. Finally, my final champion and final card of the deck is 3 copies of Malphite, the big boy himself, as a 7-mana 6/10 with Tough, making him a very difficult unit to kill. He doesn't do anything on his own until he levels up, which he basically should do every single time I play him. And then at that point, he starts generating me the Unstoppable Force cards when he levels up and when I gain the attack token. So this allows me to just straight end the game. If I have a big field of huge stone elementals, I can just kind of immediately kill my opponent off the back of that. So unless they have like a counterspell for the Unstoppable Force, and Malphite himself is no slouch in combat at a 7/11. He can do some work both on offense and defense, and he's very tough to kill outside of targeted removal, so I quite like where this card is at. It does kind of suck that he doesn't do a whole lot for you as he comes down, but if you're able to untap with a Malphite and play that Unstoppable Force, you probably are going to win the game off of it, so hence why he's here. And that's the deck, guys. It's a pretty simple deck, I think, all things considered. I'm a big fan of all the cards in this deck, so we'll take this into a couple of games and we'll see how this goes. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're in game with Band-Aid Obsession, playing a Piltoverzon Shadow Isles deck, starring only Teemo as the single champion of the deck. So he will almost certainly start with a Teemo on the battlefield. That tends to just be how this deck goes, and this hand is pretty bad as well. None of my early stuff, so we're going to go ahead and mulligan away. We're going to keep the Rockfall Path in case of an early Teemo. Obviously, you can kind of counter that with things like Spiderlings, and we're seeing the Malphite already, which I don't like. We're seeing the Taliyah already, which I don't like, but he's not coming down with a Teemo, so I'm happy with it. in the long run. We'll go ahead and drop the Hibernating Rockbear, get that ticking down already, and see what my opponent's got. He's got the Boom Crew Rookie, so this is probably a bit of an aggro deck. He's probably just going to be turning his unit sideways and trying to kill me right off the bat, so we'll definitely need to start building a board as fast as I can. We're going to take this damage, unfortunately, which it's still at 3, which is pretty nice, but we'll have the Rockfall Path down to at least remove that guy if he becomes a problem. And the Ballistic Bot as well, so I think the way this works, because they're the same strength, is it picks at random, actually, except for the fact that Ballistic Bot will get pumped up due to his own effect, so we'll play out the Earth Elemental here. Obviously, it's not going to have the bonuses yet, but it's still beefy enough to punch through either of his cards, thanks to the free power. He'll just go for the Ignition, get a little bit of extra damage off, which the deck he's playing is going to be going very aggressive very fast, so I need to do what I can do to proactively remove things. He knows better than to block there, because Boom Crew Rookie's worth way more on offense than on defense. And he's going to Stalking Shadows to try and reload the hand. This is a really interesting take. Normally this deck plays Noxus in order to get a lot more of those units that just do damage when you attack or just get damage down. So there's one of them, the Use Cask Salesman. So we're both just going to take 2 off of this. And he is going to lose one of his units here, though, for free because of the Rockfall Path. And I've got a second blocker, so that works out pretty nicely for me. And I've opened into the other Rockfall Path as well. You love to see it happen. He's going to stall a little bit by just playing the second Ignition here, which I don't have an answer for. I'm a little tempted to bring out the Earth Elemental, but I think what I want to do instead... Yeah, because the Taliyah's not going to do me anything here. We will bring out the Earth Elemental, and I can bring out the Chip as well afterwards, and we can just kind of get a sort of counter-offensive going against him, as I would assume a lot of his cards are very low to the ground. There's another Use Cask Salesman, of course there is. We will play out the Chip, who is a 3/3 because I played a landmark, and we're both taking another 2. And we have 2 Malphites, but that's not actually a big deal. You know, actually, we do want to hold off because I believe this is 4. This is not 4. I should have looked at the card to see. Unfortunate. He's got another one. We are going to be taking an absolute ton of damage off these Caustic Casks, and the problem is if I pass here, he's just going to block with these no matter what. I'm going to take this damage, and they're a bit of sort of free blocks for him, but I need to try and push through some degree of damage where I can. Yeah, so he can't afford to block out with all of these guys. He's not blocking with his second Caustic Cast, interestingly. Yeah, there he goes. I think he's seeing it. No, maybe he's got some degree of damage, and he's hoping to kill my entire board in one fell swoop. I think I will do this just to keep Chip alive. I need as many units on the field as I can because I'm going to be taking a ton of damage almost no matter what happens here. Okay, he had something, but he opted against playing it. So either way, we'll get in for some damage, and now that we're sort of even on life, the Caustic Casks aren't necessarily a benefit for him. He is still sitting on the Ignition, of course. He also has, I believe, another Use Cask Salesman in hand from the Stalking Shadow, so we'll kind of see what he wants to do here. Instead, he's got another card. It's another Stalking Shadow, so he's just going to go digging for another Use Cask Salesman. He can't play one on this turn, but as long as I can keep us at even life, we should be okay. The biggest problem, though, there, of course, is the Ignitions are going to kind of stop me from doing that. So we're going to have to pass back here. We've only played 6 mana of landmarks, unfortunately, so Malphite won't be doing too much quite yet. I do have the Imagined Possibilities, so there is a potential for me to go find something good. But of course, he's got the second Use Cask Salesman here. Not great for me. And if I play the Taliyah, this copy won't actually exist because I don't have room for it. So we will bring out the Malphite instead, just to have him on the battlefield. This does also give me a Malphite Ground Slam to potentially punch a hole in my opponent's defenses on the next turn, especially given that I have things with Overwhelm. There are some options here. He's going to create an extra one in his hand, so I am actually going to take a decent amount of damage from just the casks going off. He's got the Ignition as well. He's got another Iterative Improvement as well, so I'm taking 5 damage this turn alone. Automatically guaranteed, nothing I can do about that. So that's going to bring me down to 3. And I will not have a lot of time in order to stop my opponent. I would be surprised if he didn't swing here, but I guess he's just hoping to not die on the backswing. Does he have any extra damage? He has a Fading Memories, so he hasn't... And he's actually going to give up there. He knows he's not going to survive the backswing attack because he's taking the damage from his own Caustic Cask, so that is going to clinch it for me. So just kind of sitting there, taking the damage like a stone, and eventually my opponent runs out of gas and realizes his own casks are what's killing him. Super neat deck he was playing there, but we'll take the W. We'll move on here to game 2. And here we are once again, ladies and gentlemen, playing Human Artific, who's playing the Trundle Lysandra. It's the 8-cost deck, it's the Watcher deck, it's all of the Voidborn deck, and I do have all of my early aggression, so honestly, I kind of want to keep this. I'm going to mulligan away the Blue Sentinel because I don't want to see 2 of them. We got a Stonebreaker, so we do have at least something to ramp into. The worst thing would be if I kept both Blue Sentinels and then just kept top-decking all of my early game stuff, and then the ramp doesn't really help me at all, so I am a little bit happy to see the Stonebreaker. Obviously, I don't have the landmark support for him quite yet, but we'll kind of see how that goes. Now, I wouldn't expect him to play too much on turn 1. We are going to come down with the Chip, who he should be pretty safe, especially given that if my opponent is sitting on something like the Vile Feast in his hand, the first thing I'm going to do on my turn is play a landmark one way or another, so I do kind of have a way to play around what my opponent wants to do. He's thinking about his turn 1 here. I don't think there's anything he can do, though, on 1 mana, so not sure what the thought process was there. We are going to draw into another Blue Sentinel, but we've got the Rockhopper. Here comes the Roiling Sands. That pumps up Chip. And now if he plays a unit, I do have the ability of grabbing it with the Rockhopper, who's going to die to a Gentle Spring Breeze as is. He has nothing. So we do get to swing in. If he had the Vile Feast, he would have played it already. Or is he going to play it now? Okay. I don't know why he let me do that, because he could have played it on resolution of the Rockhopper, kill the Rockhopper, and not taken 3 here, but I guess he's assuming he's got Grasp of the Undyings and things like that in his hand, so either way, not sure what the thought process was there, but hey, I'll take it. I'm tempted to play the Blue Sentinel just to keep... Okay, he's got the Lysandra, who can block the Chip for free, so I think I will take this opportunity to start bringing out the Rock Bears, as this will allow me to start getting out those 5/4s that'll be really tough for my opponent to deal with. So he knows he can't attack into Chip, of course, so he won't even bother. Do I want to develop further or just go straight to combat? Of course, Chip can't kill Lysandra, but he doesn't know that, so I think what I will do is just declare attacks and see what he wants to do. And that can help inform my next decision as well. The 3 damage is a lot. I don't know that he wants to take it, but he's also scared that I'm sitting on all this mana. I don't think he wants to block the Lysandra, so he's just going to trade out the Spider because he doesn't want to lose the Lys. Which is weird. I don't think she's actually that good on her own. Like, you really need to see her flip before she becomes a valuable card. So, and he's trying to pass back, so we'll play out the other Hibernating Rockbear, because we need to get these countdowns counting down as quick as we can. Now he's thinking again. Shadow Isles does have a form of landmark removal, but he doesn't have the mana for it, and he's not gonna play it when his only unit is a Lysandra. And I don't believe the Freljord has much except an 8-cost unit, so either way, we're gonna play out the Blue Sentinel, and he's just gonna try and pass it back to his turn and keep that ramp going. We're ticking down on our Rock Bears. We do have the Shaped Sands, or the Shaped Stone this time, which is quite nice for me. I don't believe the Stonebreaker is going to be able to do anything for me quite yet. I haven't played enough landmarks. But if I do see a landmark, I can nuke the Lysandra with a 4 damage from him. So, okay, he was waiting for the Blighted Ravine, which this is going to do a good amount of damage to everybody. He is going to heal to full. Now, the Lysandra will survive this. She's going to lose 2 health, but everything I have except Chip will survive as well. So, I don't really care too much. I have the Ra-Horak as well. We'll just go to combat here and see what he wants to do. Now, he may be sitting on the Harsh Winds, which would not surprise me. It's a pretty good card, especially a good defensive card for a deck like this that wants to play late. It's Withering Wail instead. I am going to play this because it's going to keep my Blue Sentinel alive, which sounds weird. I do want him to die, but this is going to be 10 damage to the dome. He didn't declare any blocks. So unless he wants to double down and play another spell here to try and either remove it or mitigate the damage, like, I'm actually in a really good spot here in this game. Okay, he's going to Flash Freeze. Yeah, so we are getting the extra spell, but we're kind of preventing him from doing a lot of development. He will heal a little bit here, but he is still going to take the 5. I'm going to get a little bit of extra mana ramp. Also, I have now played my 4th landmark. Thank you very much. Now I can bring out the Stonebreaker and nuke the Lysandra. So it actually ends up working out for me in the grand scheme of things. She's going to go down, take a little bit of extra damage. I unfortunately just use my attack token, so he will have an opportunity to either develop or clear my board on the next round, but I know he doesn't have mana for Ruination. Yeah, he's 1 mana off, or I would be really scared of getting ruined, but he doesn't have it. Now the question is what he's got in his hand. He will bring out the Trundle, but I am going to bring out the Malphite here. And we'll kind of see if he has an answer for me on the backswing, because I will just go straight to combat, and I think he's dead, assuming he doesn't have anything like the Harsh Winds. Yeah, especially given that I've got the Ground Slam as well. I'm kind of tempted to play the Eye of the Ra-Horak just to get Malphite to flip, because then I get the, yeah, you know what, this is actually a good play here. I do lose an Eye of the Ra-Horak, but Malphite is going to flip with a very good flip animation. So good. Great art on the flip card as well, but because we have the Unstoppable Force, unless he just straight up clears the field here, which he could, he is on Ruination mana if he wants to go for it, then I'm just going to stun everything he owns and swing in with the boys, and the game is going to be over. So the ball is sort of in his court here as to what he wants to do. He has Avalanche. That's going to kill 2 of my units. I am going to take this opportunity to punch him, because this is his activation. I can stun the Trundle. So the Trundle's going to be stunned. The damage does... Oh, actually, the Trundle dies here. I didn't even think about that, but hey, I'm a genius. And he is dead, unless he has any Frostbites in hand, which I would be surprised if he didn't have a Harsh Winds. He's got enough mana to play it as well. He has the Flash Freeze, so he's going to take 11 and barely hold on to life here. This is where having another Stonebreaker would be super useful, as it would allow me to get in the last of the damage, but unfortunately don't have it. Either Horak is... Okay, it will do something for me on the next turn. And we'll just pass this back. I will be able to get some more Unstoppable Forces on my next turn, though, so even if he develops, it shouldn't matter. Unless he's able to kill off my other units. Okay, he will bring down the Ice Pillar. That's a free card, and it does get Lysandra closer to the level up. We'll play out the Earth Elemental. And again, he's on Ruination mana. He has the option of playing so many good cards here. The question is it going to be enough? More so, that's asking for me. I don't know if it's going to be enough quite yet. I'm really hoping we can get through enough damage here on the backswing, but he's got 4 cards in hand. Okay, Blighted Ravine. That's going to heal him, and that will kill off 2 of my units at the end of the turn. At the start of the next turn, so playing this even now won't matter. But I will get another Unstoppable Force in hand, allowing me to stun his board. And I do have 2 units to attack with after the sort of explosions go off here. So I will Unstoppable Force. And that will leave him with only 1 unit he can play. And then that potentially allows me to swing around him. Especially given that I've got the Shapestone in hand to finish things off. That's his activation. We're just going to go in. In fact, actually, no, we don't want to grab that. Harsh Winds. Grasp of the Undying, but this is where Shapestone is going to come into play, as we should make him just large enough to survive the grasp and punch in for the finishing blow, assuming he has nothing else in hand. If he's got a Vile Feast, again, I'm really sad, because then he's got enough damage. He's going to heal some more. The Lysandra's probably going to survive. He's going to Entreat, but that doesn't do you any good with the champions you're playing. Yeah, so we got it. I don't know. I guess he's playing the on treat because he's sitting on it being like, I drew all my champions. This card is useless. And that's why I'm not a big fan of on treat in the first place. But this deck is performing significantly better than I expected it to. It's doing way better than it did in tests. So we only made a couple of tweaks to it between now and then. So we'll see how it goes. We'll keep it rolling. We'll go into game 3 and maybe we can get a clean streak here with Malphite. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're here against Hibernating, who's playing the Azir Renekton Buried Sun Disk deck that we're also very familiar with. And for potentially the last game of the night here, this hand is pretty bad. I'm going to mulligan this away, see if I can't find a unit. I do have Imagined Possibilities. This is the biggest reason I'm keeping this hand. This hand is pretty bad, not gonna lie, but we do have some degree of flexibility here, which is the reason I'm going to stick it out. He's going to come down with Sun Disk. I'm hoping for my Desert Naturalist to show up. She's a pretty good answer to the Sun Disk deck, as it turns out. Got the Rockhopper instead, which is fine. And he has an Emperor's Dais, so because... Actually, I should have played the Rockhopper. I could have got him down with no sort of ability for my opponent to stop me, so that was a bit of a mistake, I would say, on my part, but we are going to bring him out now. Get me out the Roiling Sands, so if he does play out a unit, I do have the ability to punch it directly in the face. It is Chronomancer, though, which he's pretty happy about having, so that doesn't help me too much, though I will be able to grab the Chronomancer and punch him directly in the face with my Rockhopper. And kind of see if he wants to spend any... Yeah, he doesn't want to play any defensive spells on that, it's not worth it. He already got his value, and we'll just end the round there. Now, we did time out the sort of Hibernating Rockbear well, because this will be a 5/4 on my turn. I can bring out the Earth Elemental. I haven't played enough landmarks, unfortunately, so I may just flood out with the Rockfall Paths. Because I don't care about taking 4, that's alright. I've got the Rockfall Path, and what he doesn't know is that I am sitting on an Imagined Possibilities. So not only will I be able to open attack with this, but the Renekton is just going to die. And he doesn't have any mana to stop this from happening. So goodbye, Renekton. And hello, 8 damage to the dome. Swinging in. He can totally... Yeah, okay, he doesn't want to play Quicksand on that, so we'll be able to get some damage in. He's down to Renekton. We've got this second Rockfall Path as well. And because Azir is so weak, it's very likely that he just dies when this goes off. So, bring out the second one. We already have Taliyah flipped. Oh, that's a good tech card. This is another new card that was released. Everything having Spell Shield is a pretty good counter. It also protects the Sun Disk from getting killed. I will have to steal that for use in my own deck, but that's kind of sad for me. Unfortunate. Also, the Soothsayer's of 1/4, so she would have died before the Azir as is. So I'm not altogether too sad about it. I may actually end up playing this for a landmark this time around, as I need just a little bit more to get Malphite going. And I don't think there's any benefit to popping this now, unless he plays an even weaker unit that I want killed, but I don't think that even exists in this deck. So he'll Ambassador, he'll go get another card. I'm guessing it's Renekton, it's almost always Renekton. I will play this out. We're going to make a countdown landmark. It's actually another Rockfall Path. That's really funny. Because that does mean that... Yeah, yeah, he's a little sad about that one. Honestly, I totally feel you, dude. So he's going to go in. I do have the Rockhopper here to just block with. I think he understands that. He's gonna swing with the Azir as well. This might be a bait, but I think he's assuming the Azir is dead regardless, so... See if he's got anything. He's got 3 mana, so this should be like a Quicksand. Okay, this is the Shapestone. This does keep the Azir alive. It does let him trade to the Rockbear as well, so I'm a little sad about that. But this is definitely going to leave Azir as the weakest unit, which therefore means he's gonna get obliterated. In comes the Rock Elemental. He's getting his buff. I do think I want to actually just play... Oh! Okay, that goes through spell shields, apparently. I did not know that, but I'm not altogether upset about it, either. Let's play Malphite. So we get the Unstoppable Force. He's going to come down flipped. Like I said, you're almost never going to see this card not flipped. Trying to remember, there are a couple other cards that basically, when they get played, like, they almost always come down flipped. Nautilus is the other one, so the 2 big beefy boys. And he's kind of looking at his hand like, okay, we will Unstoppable Force. I know he's got another champion in hand. It could be a Renekton, or it could be an Azir. Stun his guys up. I know he has a champion in hand because of the Golden Ambassador. So the question is, does he want to play it? Knowing that I have shenanigans I can do with my landmarks. He's going to play the Bakai Sand Spinner because he thinks that's going to be enough to keep him alive, and it very well might be. No, we want to... Okay, let's get my damage correct here. There we go. This is the block he knows he wants. He's going to take 2 off the Overwhelm. He's going to block 7 there. This is the only block that keeps him alive, but Malphite kills off the Bakai Sand Spinner, so it doesn't really matter too much. Not to me, at least. It matters to him. So that's going to be his Soothsayer obliterated. She already did her job, so that's not that big of a deal. And the second Taliyah feels pretty bad because I have no landmarks for her to duplicate as she comes down, but Taliyah's Stoneweaving is her champion spell, so if I play the first Taliyah for no value, I can then play the second Taliyah as the champion spell to go get a landmark. We do still have the Malphite as well, who is going to be able to get another Unstoppable Force on my turn, so unless he has a way of either removing Malphite or building a big enough board that he can threaten me, I think we've got this. And he's really taking his time. The Clock Hand! That's a super weird one to have. We'll bring out the Taliyah. So Clock Hand's another new card here that allows him to progress his landmark potentially by 8. He gets that Sun Disk down to 7. I think his Azir as well maybe flip, so he might just be able to pop off with a Sun Disk right here, right now, assuming he's sitting... Oh no, because he can't play it, because he only has Clock Hand. So we will kill off Chip here, which is sad and lets you know this is the bad guy. This is the enemy of the shonen antagonist of this game because he's killing Chip. We're gonna Taliyah Stoneweaving here. Go get something I can afford, which is none of these are very good, but we will get the Empress Dais. The advantage of Taliyah Stoneweaving is that it always gives you a landmark you can afford at the time, so you're never gonna feel bad about playing it and getting a super expensive landmark that doesn't help. We have the Unstoppable Force. Let's go ahead. Oh, I could have actually just gone straight to combat because Taliyah would have killed him off of her damage. I didn't even consider that, but either way, we'll see what he comes down with. He's in Mono Shurima, so he has nothing that will just remove my board, or that should be able to build him up a big enough defense. And if he can't kill the Taliyah, he's just going to die to the Taliyah. That was honestly a misplay on my part. If I'd have gone straight to combat, he would have died. He's going to make a Blighted Ravine, which healed him 8. That's huge! That was such a good random landmark to pull, but it's exactly what he needed. I guess I already had some luck with that earlier in this game when I got the random Rockfall Path. That was a pretty good pull on my part as well, so I guess he was due one. I guess he's going to go for another landmark and hope it helps, and it's the Rockbear, so the game should be over. I would expect a concession here unless he's got... no, there's nothing here. There's nothing here that saves him, because he has no proactive way of killing Taliyah. And his board is now flooded, so he could destroy one or obliterate one of his units or landmarks in order to play out a unit. Yeah, he's doing the math, and he's like, there's nothing for me here. So that's 3-0 for this deck. Okay, I don't think this deck is good, guys. I really, really don't. I just think we got some luck going for us for sure, but I don't know. I really don't know what to say, guys. This deck did not do nearly this well in any of the trials. Of course, I was playing against a lot of the Azir Aurelia deck, which is absurdly good, so I might play that next week for you guys, because it's really, really solid. It's the kind of deck that I think is just tier 0 right off the bat, looking at it. I'm like, that deck is super good. But either way, that was Malphite Rocks, guys. It's a super fun deck to play. I love Malphite. I love Chip. I think Taliyah is a super fun card to play with, so I hope you guys had fun watching this video, and I hope you guys are enjoying the Legends of Runeterra content too, so let me know all that down in the comment section below if you're having fun watching this. Would love to hear about it. Don't forget to leave a like on the video as well. It does let me know that you're enjoying the content and generally helps me out. If you really enjoy the content, also consider subscribing. It just, you know, if you want to stick around and see some more, really, that's all. The only reason I ask for it is if you like it, hey, consider sticking around and getting a notification whenever I upload videos like these. Come out every Monday, Friday, and on patch days for regular League of Legends content, and Legends of Runeterra content on Sundays. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.